Broadcasting from the Cass Corridor in Detroit, this is The Metro on WDET, Detroit's NPR station. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. Today on the program, chickens, ducks, and honeybees might be moving in next door.
For real, we could have some new neighbors here at WDET, and that's because Detroit City Council just approved a new livestock ordinance.
We'll speak with an urban farmer about the significance of the new ordinance and what it's really like to raise chickens in the city.
Also, we explore the evolving and vital role of comedy in our society, how it opens the door to essential commentary and thought.
But first, the awkward acronym PFAS stands for a group of chemicals that have become a household name. That's because they're likely in your house and in your body. They're the chemicals that make pans non-stick and clothing water resistant. These forever chemicals, which have been linked to cancer, don't break down, and they've been leaching into our drinking water. That contamination has been characterized as a pressing environmental issue in Michigan's lakes, rivers, and groundwater. The state has passed regulations in recent years to address that. But this week, the Michigan Supreme Court heard arguments in a case that could roll back those regulations if the court rules in favor of the company 3M. The news about PFAS isn't all doom and gloom, though. Some research suggests that these brilliant little microbes can break down the forever chemicals, but it's going to take some time. So to understand this research, we have William Dichtell on the line. He's a chemist at Northwestern University who researches how to break down these forever chemicals in energy-efficient ways. Professor Dichtell, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you. It's nice to be with you.
So before we get into the promising research I mentioned, I want to spend a little time looking at the problem of PFAS. How big of an issue is this?
This is a major issue. We have estimates of contamination of U.S. drinking water ranging from 50 to upwards of 100 million people. So that's a big chunk of the United States. And really, we're even still discovering the scope of the problem. So it's large. It's going to affect the United States for many decades. I think a good analogy is to that of lead, which we've known about as a water contaminant for a long time, and we still are working on fixing that problem.
I think I was reading that it's at least half of the drinking water in the U.S. is contaminated with PFAS. Does that track with what you know?
That's about right. It might be anywhere from 50%, maybe just slightly lower, but it's in that ballpark.
Professor Dichtell, is it hitting certain people, would you say, disproportionately?
I think almost all human-made environmental contamination, unfortunately, tends to affect those who are less fortunate in our society. That's not specific to PFAS, but generally just how our society works and how real estate sales and things like that. So I think with any environmental crisis, we have to look. Of course, it affects everybody, but we certainly have to recognize that it's going to affect populations that have less freedom of movement and less agency over their water, as likely even more affected than the average person.
And what are the consequences of PFAS exactly?
Chronic exposure to even low amounts of PFAS in water or in household items or other avenues of exposure are associated with elevated risks of certain cancers, complications in pregnancy and childbirth, thyroid problems, elevated cholesterol, reduced response to vaccines. And it's important to know that PFAS are actually a large class of compounds. It's not like lead, where lead in one place is more or less the same as lead somewhere else, just depending on its concentration. Here, PFAS refers to a whole family of approximately 10,000 compounds or so. So PFAS contamination in one place may have different health effects than PFAS contamination in another place. But generally speaking, you do not want to be exposed to these compounds, no matter what the exact PFAS are present in a given area.
So when we're talking about these thousands of chemicals, I wonder for Michiganders and folks in other Great Lakes states, what should we know about the levels of PFAS in the Great Lakes and our rivers and streams for that matter?
Well, rivers and streams are definitely affected depending on exactly where you are. So PFAS have been used in a lot of consumer products and as well as in firefighting foam, which affects airports, military installations, as well as places where firefighters have trained. So those areas are very historically contaminated. Also, industrial sites. So in Michigan, especially, you've got the Dow Chemical Company, which has historically been a major manufacturer and seller of PFAS. And then you have many other industries that have used PFAS in their products. And so there are maps available online that one can find by pretty simple searches that will point out where PFAS have been tracked. The Michigan state government in particular has a very detailed one, and so that's a great place for your listeners to go look at their local area and what is known.
Okay, so we're now getting a sense of how pervasive PFAS is and how widespread the problem is. Let's get to a little bit of the potential good news, Professor Dichtell. You've said that this research showing microbes can break down PFAS is in its exploratory stages. Could you talk about that research in a way that us normal non-science people can understand it?
Absolutely. Researchers at the University of California, Riverside, discovered microbes, or tiny little organisms that live out in our environment, or pretty much everywhere. Very specific classes of those are actually able to break down PFAS in certain contexts. And so it's promising in the sense that it shows that this might be possible, whereas PFAS are also sometimes known as forever chemicals, specifically because they are not broken down in the environment. So this is great news. However, the research is right now academic in nature. The dream here is that these microbes might sit out in our environment or our wastewater treatment plants and passively break down PFAS and slowly take care of this problem for us without us having to do a whole lot of more active removal and PFAS destruction. And hopefully that will come to pass someday. But right now, these microbes only tackle a small number of PFAS, and they operate very, very slowly. So they'll need to be major improvements for this before it's really practical.
So you're saying in an ideal world, this would happen organically versus with human intervention, but could I even ask what that means or what that would look like, or is that just going to throw us way too deep into the weeds?
No, I think it's pretty simple. We already take water from the ground or from in the Great Lakes region. We get a lot of our water from the Great Lakes, and we take it through drinking water treatment plants. And in the coming years, many drinking water treatment plants in the United States are going to have technology installed that will remove PFAS so that the drinking water delivered to our homes and our businesses is PFAS-free. And those technologies are now emerging, and so it will be possible to do this. It's just going to be expensive. And it's going to be a whole other thing we need to do to our water to make it safe for all of us to drink. So that's going to happen, but we are also constantly putting new PFAS into the environment. And so the long-term solutions here are going to be, first, stop using PFAS, really eliminate them from as many uses in our society as we possibly can. And second, having things like this discovery more mature to break down PFAS passively, where we're not installing technologies to do it, one can get some benefit from that for relatively little money once these are all ready.
You're listening to the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent with Tia Graham. We're speaking with chemist William Dichtell about research that shows microbes could help us address the problem of PFAS, or forever chemicals. Now, Professor Dichtell, when we talk about the need to stop using PFAS, we know federal PFAS regulations have gotten more stringent under the Biden-Harris administration. Some people are concerned they could be rolled back under the incoming Trump administration. How important have these regulations been in limiting the use of PFAS?
Well, it's been already a multi-decade process for even these regulations at the EPA to come to the forefront. It would be very unfortunate if they are rolled back now. But in terms of the use of PFAS in the United States starting to be curtailed, there are other factors that motivate companies to get out of the PFAS business. And one of the big ones has actually been the threat of class action lawsuits. And so there is, in my opinion, a very fair sentiment that the manufacturers and users of PFAS and those who have profited billions of dollars a year from them for many decades should play a major role in the cost of remediation. Now, they're not going to be able to cover it all. They simply don't have enough money to do that, but they should certainly be held responsible for this cleanup. And instead of that happening through the EPA, what has happened so far is that a lot of chemical companies, such as 3M, carry financial liabilities on their balance sheets even now for anticipated costs related to PFAS settlements. And the fear of future liabilities in other industries is one factor that is motivating companies to eliminate PFAS from their products and not introduce new PFAS.
Professor Dichtell, in the last 30 seconds that we have, I want to know how you in your personal life, how you avoid PFAS and what others can do as well.
Unfortunately, this is a very common question because consumers like to feel like they're in control of a problem, and simply by making different choices in their lives, maybe they can improve their health benefits. And this is one where the consumer doesn't really have much control. We're using PFAS in so many different contexts, and we have so much historical contamination. This has to be solved at the societal level. This isn't a matter of just changing the brand of toothpaste that you use or drinking a different kind of bottled water or something like that. It's really pretty futile.
Okay, so then it sounds like it's about people getting more involved in policy and trying to be involved in politics and the people making those policies, perhaps, if we want to push for further change.
Yes, that is the only long-term solution to the problem.
William Dichtell is a chemist at Northwestern University. He researches energy-efficient ways to break down so-called forever chemicals, or PFAS. Professor Dichtell, thank you so much for joining the Metro.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
The Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. You just heard from Robin Vincent. I'm Tia Graham from the WDET Newsroom. Detroit voters will choose a new mayor next year. That's because Mayor Mike Duggan says he will not run for a fourth term and will announce his future political plans later on, whatever that means. Also, the city launches a new program today to offer pregnant women and new parents free transportation and to and from doctor visits and 1 year of free pediatric appointments for newborns up to a year old. That is very significant for new parents.
Coming up, we'll discuss a new city ordinance that allows people to have chickens and bees in their backyards. Welcome back to the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. Backyard chickens and ducks in Detroit?
What?
I know. Growing up in the city, I would have been shocked to see chickens roaming joy in Southfield Freeway. Yet local officials continue to introduce new concepts and services to residents. That includes efforts to improve Detroit's relationships with urban farms and farmers. This week, the Detroit City Council passed a new animal ordinance in a 5-3 vote, which will go into effect in January. At that time, animal owners will need to apply for a license and pay an annual fee to have chickens, ducks, and bees in their backyards, but they'll have them. And just to note, roosters are not allowed, and wild animals remain prohibited. Joining us now to talk about the impact this ordinance will have on urban farming is Jerry Hebron. Jerry is the executive director of Oakland Avenue Urban Farm. She is also the executive director of the North End Christian Community Development Corporation. Jerry, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course. Well, thank you for being here. And this is such an important conversation to have, especially with someone who has so much experience and skin in the game in terms of urban farming and small growing. So why is it important that this ordinance pass, especially for urban farms and small growers?
Thanks for the question. I have to say that we've been farming in the city of Detroit since 2009. And a lot of our work has been connected to youth during the summer. And so in addition to that, I personally work with the Michigan State Fair Urban Ag Scholarship Fund. And so with that, we're connected to the 4-H Club. Having chickens, ordinance that allows chickens in the city is huge in terms of education for our young people, connecting them to where eggs come from, how that connects directly to farming. It's a complete ecosystem, having these chickens and bees as a part of our farming community. So it's not a new concept, I'll say. Chickens have been in Detroit for years.
Yeah.
They were here when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It probably is not a nice thing to have them roaming wild or, kind of loose in the neighborhoods. That I think that turns people off.
Yeah.
But I do think it is a very good thing for us to have them as a part of our ecosystem.
So, Jerry, just staying on that in that lane, there are some folks who aren't interested in having chickens in their backyards or next door to them. They may think they are too noisy, or like you said, chickens and wild animals possibly roaming the city of Detroit, livestock that is. So what do you make of this argument?
So I respectfully am conscious of their dislikes for this. I'm not sure I would like it either. Sometimes that could be disruptive. And I'm sorry for the noise in the background.
Yeah,
my dog is out.
Okay.
But let me just be totally transparent. We have had chickens at our farm since 2017.
Wow.
We have built a very secure 40-foot coop for our girls to live, to graze, and to be safe. We want them to be safe, but we also want the human beings in our neighborhood to be safe.
Yeah.
So our chickens are enclosed. And I think that, I am a proponent for that. I think there should be very good coop enclosures where they can roam free range, but also be safe from predators as well as human beings.
And Jerry, you talked about it just a little bit there, but the benefits of having livestock within neighborhoods, you already talked about how you incorporate that with the youth, but if you can just talk about how that creates this communal space when you have livestock within neighborhoods, especially when they are able to connect you to other folks.
Well, it's always interesting when we host tours, which we do very frequently. And, people come, they see the farm, they want to see where the food is grown. But then they also get very excited when they see our chickens. Because, honestly, people connect livestock to farming. It's just second nature.
Yeah.
And so what they're happy to see is not only do we offer fruits and vegetables and herbs, we have a protein source. And that protein source comes from eggs. And those eggs are, very high in nutrient context because our chickens eat what we grow at the farm, chemical-free. And so people like that.
Yes, Jerry, this conversation, we talk about farming, urban farming here in the city of Detroit on the Metro quite often. And you just talked a little bit about how, livestock is often connected to urban farming. Do you see it as a separate thing, owning livestock in farming, or do you see that always being the connection there?
I think it is the connection.
Yeah.
When you go out into the rural areas, what do you see? You see livestock. Mm-hmm. You see food growing. It's a part of the ecosystem, and it helps with managing food waste. So, for example, I just mentioned that the chickens at our farm eat what we grow. So when we have waste coming from the fields, guess what we do? We feed that. We feed that to our chickens, and then the waste from the chickens go back into the soil as fertilizer. It is a complete ecosystem, and this is not new. This is centuries old.
Yes. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Metro on Detroit's NPR station. I'm Tia Graham, across from Robin Vincent, and we're chatting with Oakland Avenue Urban Farms Executive Director Jerry Hebron about Detroit's ordinance that will allow livestock in Detroit. And Jerry, once again, you've had livestock since 2017 at the farm, but I'm thinking about what you were just talking about there and the ecosystem of it and how it all thrives and comes together. The Great Migration, I always come back to that. A lot of the ancestors and a lot of the folks in the city of Detroit, ancestors came from the South, and a lot of the Southern ancestors were in agriculture, and they were sharecroppers, and a lot of that knowledge came up here with us today. So can you talk about how you're preserving that knowledge and help incorporating that back into everyday life here in the city of Detroit?
Well, that's part of the storytelling and education for young people. Because, believe it or not, young people in the city of Detroit are not hearing that narrative in their homes, and they're not hearing that narrative in school. So we get to connect our young people to our ancestry legacy, which is connected to farming and growing our own food and raising our own livestock. My grandparents in Tennessee had a farm. Everything that we ate, everything that they ate came from the farm. Their food, they made their own milk, their butter, and the food waste went back to the animals, and then that waste went back to the soil. So it is a process. It is a part of the ecosystem. But what these young people are learning is that food doesn't come from Myers. Yeah. It ended up in Myers, but that's not where it originated from. So what is that story? So you start telling the story of, yes, my grandfather was a sharecropper. He grew the most amazing sweet potatoes. I'm not ashamed of that. I'm very proud of that. And in that, my grandfather taught me to be respectful of the earth, that we have to take care of the earth. And this is why. It's because our food comes from the earth and all of the nutrients that we need to nurture our body. So it's a part of the story that we talk about when we talk about our ancestry connection to farming. Yes, there were some things, parts of that are not very pleasant. Yeah. We talk about that too, right? Mm-hmm. But it's part of the storytelling that every family has a story that should be shared with our generational kids that they carry on. I feel so proud when I'm able to take our urban kids to the state fair and then also take them out to the rural areas to see how these families live on farms and how they respect the earth and how just about everything they need comes from their surroundings.
Yeah.
And it's a different lifestyle here in the city. We depend on grocery stores and other providers. Well, we know what that turned out to be when COVID hit, right?
Yeah, we got really rough for a lot of us during COVID when we couldn't get the food that we're used to. And
guess what? We sold a lot of eggs during that time.
The girls were working. Jerry, just kind of staying in this vein and talking just a little bit about the importance of learning where we came from and how it helps inspire us today. Same thing with me. My grandparents came up from the South. They had a farm here in the rural area in Sumter Township. And I just remember seeing chickens growing up. And so just having that connection to the roots, the soil, to the land is very, very important, especially when we think about remembering our ancestors and remembering our heritage here, especially in the city of Detroit. But Jerry, just talking about chickens again and talking about urban farming and getting back into the nitty gritty of it, for those who are planning on keeping chickens now, what are some of the things that they should know about chores and upkeep when we talk about having livestock, especially in an urban setting?
Well, I mean, it's like raising children, right? Livestock, they're like raising children. You have to care for them daily. So every day we're in the chicken coop. We are in the chicken coop harvesting eggs. We are making sure that our sanitation practices are up to date. We're looking at our girls to make sure that they're healthy. When we feed them and when we change their water every day, we're making sure that everything is sanitized, not only for us, but for, the layers that we're taking care of.
Yeah.
This is important because we don't want, it's important for a lot of reasons, but mostly we don't want to have to deal with medical bills and things like that. And I got to tell you, here in Detroit, one of the things that we lack is farm veterinarians. That's another thing that we need to be thinking about. In the rural areas, they have traveling veterinarians. We don't really have that here in the city. Yeah. So because we do not have that, we have to be very, very on point in terms of our medical care, and then trying to figure out if something happens, where do we take our girls?
Yeah.
Or can we get someone to come in? So that's just another layer that we haven't talked about, but it's a layer that we need to be thinking about everywhere.
Yeah, and before I let you go,
before
I let you go, Jerry, going forward, what can we expect from an urban farmer's point of view in terms of this ordinance? How is this going to help boost revenues or create jobs within the urban farming community, having livestock now allowed in this capacity?
One of the things I can tell you is that I know this with our young people. Every year, and we're a part of the Real Detroit Talent program here in Detroit. So every year when these kids come to the farm to spend the summer with us, mm-hmm. and we train them how to practice animal husbandry, we talk about career paths. So, most people tell kids, oh, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer. I talk about, do you want to be a farmer?
Yeah.
Or can you be a farmer? Or maybe can you be a veterinarian, right? And if you're going to be a veterinarian, you got to learn how to take care of these chickens, right? So there are other career paths for our young people that are non-traditional. And this is what we want to do. We want to expose them to all the different opportunities out there in the farming community, as well as being a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher, right?
Yeah.
Within the community itself, we hire 12 people at our farm. They live in our community. They have learned and are learning everything about agriculture, but they're also learning about livestock. They are the experts. So when we take our food to farmers market, or when we're selling our food to Eastern Market or to the Detroit People's Food Co-op or some other place like that, our farm team has harvested, prepped, and packaged this food with not only their skills, but also their love. And guess what? Yes, they are making a living wage. So this is the future. And so having another source of income, being able to sell eggs, and at some point meat, is extremely important to the work that we do here.
Jerry Hebron, honestly, I can't wait to talk to you again. Jerry is the executive director of Oakland Avenue Urban Farm. She is also the executive director of North End Christian Community Development Corporation. Thank you so very much for stopping by the Metro. Once again, we look forward to chatting with you soon, Jerry.
Come by the farm.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, Tia, so the $1 million question for you is, would you raise chickens?
Yes, just listening to Jerry, she got me pumped up. I think if I learned from Jerry, then I would be perfectly fine to raise my own girls. And I would love to raise my own girls, have a little chicken coop, have eggs, fresh eggs. My grandma used to have a chicken coop, like I said earlier. She had fresh eggs. We have fresh scrambled eggs in the morning. And it was just amazing to have that experience growing up. So yeah, I would be down for that if I owned a home.
Yeah, there's that detail.
Yeah,
Indeed.
yeah. It's a little, yeah.
I'm sure that your neighbors will be understanding of the girls, which, by the way, I have to say, hearing Jerry describe her chickens as our girls, that made us both just melt a little bit. I would treat my chickens similarly, like the little queens that they would be, giving me the golden eggs.
Yes. Yes, they would have the best seeds, the hay. They're going to live in the lap of luxury, my
little
girls.
crowns.
Yes. Ugh. Don't get me started. We're going to buy some land and we're going to get this started. However, in the news, Robin, news, we do have sports news. The Red Wings did beat the Penguins 3-2, speaking of birds, in overtime in Pittsburgh as well. In the NBA, the Pistons lost to the Milwaukee Bucks 127-120 in overtime. It's a big game for Milwaukee Bucks player Giannis. I'm not going to attempt his last name right now, but we know. Scored 59 points during last night's game against the Pistons. The player had an 8-0 run, which forced the Pistons into overtime. So that's absolutely insane to think that Giannis had that game last night. He went monster. He went beast mode last night, and the Pistons couldn't recover.
But they made a valiant effort. And in other news, Detroit will host a reverse vending machine in Campus Martius this holiday season. The giving machine allows people to donate items to folks in the Detroit area and worldwide. The machine is filled with cards representing items for donations that range in price from $5 to $250. Coming up, Monopoly now has a Detroit edition. We'll learn about how certain Detroit names and places made it onto the board. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. I'm guessing you've probably played this little old game called Monopoly. There's a new spin on this classic board game that still looms large in so many of our minds, and it's for Detroiters and lovers of the city. Monopoly Detroit Edition features iconic locations like the Ambassador Bridge and the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, also the Detroit Princess Boat, and the Renaissance Center, whose future is to be declared.
This certainly isn't the only makeover of Monopoly. The company Top Trumps USA has been recreating the board game for a decade, but this edition celebrates Detroit And as such, I wanted to speak with the designer, Tim Barney. Tim spoke about why Detroit was a cool place to explore.
At the beginning of the selection cycle, what we did was we came out with the media and we said, hey, public, who do you want to see in your Detroit Monopoly game? And so we received thousands of submissions from people all across the city and beyond about their favorite restaurants, their favorite schools, their favorite attractions, shops, you name it, nonprofits, highlighting locations and all those things. And then I did my best to read through every single one, and there were quite a few. They've been involved from the start. We hope that everybody's going to be happy. Of course, inevitably, there's going to be something we left out. There's going to be somebody's team or somebody's school or somebody's favorite restaurant that may not have made it. But I think we've still got a lot of really wonderful things there that people are going to be happy about.
So, Tim, is this the official Monopoly board for Detroit, or will we see other versions in the future?
We want the game to be the official edition for the foreseeable future. That's why we cared so much about getting it right this time. We want this to be the true Detroit edition. So we don't plan on coming back in, say, 3 years and doing an updated edition. So it's meant to be in the market for some time and in family homes for hopefully generations.
So how long have you all been recreating game boards? What do you like the most about this work?
Our company, we have a license with Hasbro to make Monopoly games all across the United States, but we've been making these internationally for a lot longer than that. So in the U.S., it's been since 2020, but internationally, it's been for, I believe, a couple of decades now. So sometime. Definitely not our first rodeo. I think one of my favorite things about it is that I get to visit each of the areas I'm creating games for and fully immerse myself in the culture while I'm there. Just really want to make sure I get it right. This is a game that's very much made by and for the people. That's why we include them in our nominations and submissions process. And we try to tap into all the people that have their thumb on the pulse of the community to make sure everybody's represented, all these different cultures, neighborhoods, business sizes, so little mom and pop shops all the way to some of the biggest names in the area. So it's a challenging experience because we only have a few spots in the game to offer. There's so many property spaces within the game, and we're so spoiled for choice. Detroit has proven to be just a really incredible city with a lot to offer. So it was tough, but I think the public's going to be really happy with what it came out to be.
Tim, I wanted to go back really quickly because the process of sifting through all of the submissions and going through and picking the top spots that you would like to represent or be represented in the Monopoly board game. Can you go through that process a little bit? Because you kind of had to turn into a little bit of a historian, a journalist, figuring out some of these facts and important pieces and putting them together to tell the story on the board. So what was that like?
There are a number of things that we look for with everybody that's being considered. There needs to be longevity. So it's important that the organization, landmark, nonprofit, whoever it might be, they've been around for at least a few years, right? So they're established in the community. And that part of the reason for that is because the game is meant to be around for a really long time. So we wanted to have that confidence, like, okay, you're still going to be here in 2 or 3 years in the game. And then the next thing's credibility, which was established in a variety of ways. Sometimes that comes through the number of submissions and nominations that come in on their behalf. Sometimes it's through online reviews or blogs or articles, or we've heard about them from the local tourism office, or on and on. They've won awards, perhaps. And then community engagement was another big factor. It was great to talk to so many companies that clearly do a lot more than just their normal day to day, but they interact with the public on a very personal level, maybe through supporting different charities and nonprofits or doing special events and the like. So that was a big box to check for me, because my opinion is that if they benefit from all this extra exposure being in the game, then all those other cool activities and charities and things, they'll benefit too, either directly or indirectly by having these folks promoted. And finally, we just wanted to choose people that were super excited about it and wanted to have fun with it. It's a game, after all. It's a game that's been around for close to 100 years, and I want to say I heard an estimate that it'd been played by over 1 billion people worldwide since that time, which is phenomenal. Everybody's got this connection to it, and for people to, an organization that really wants to tap into that nostalgia, that fun spirit, that was another big thing for us too.
So, Tim, you did the research, you did the work, you got here. I know it was a lot of work when you were here, but what was it like being a visitor of the city of Detroit? What did you think of the city?
Detroit was wonderful. I really fell in love with the city, and I did not feel like I had enough time to, get around and explore. But I hit the pavement as soon as I got here, walking up and down the streets, driving to as many different areas and neighborhoods as I can. I just found it to be super wonderful, and I hope that we were able to capture that spirit within our game. So go pick it up, tell us what you think, and enjoy playing it around the holidays with your family.
That was Tim Barney, a designer with Top Trumps USA. Tim created Monopoly Detroit Edition. The game is now available to purchase at places featured on the board game. It's also on Amazon. And Robin, did you and your family play Monopoly or board games in general?
Definitely. I remember oftentimes when the power would go out when I was growing up, that would be the way to rein in myself and my siblings. Let's play Monopoly. We'd play it by candlelight. When the power was on and people were feeling fierce, it was poker.
Yeah.
We set the board games aside and started tearing each other apart with the chips.
I can't play card games. I don't like to use
We're
canned,
gonna
but
change that.
I don't understand them. It's just a lot happening. I'm just I don't know all these rules. It's a lot to keep up with, and then people are intense. It's too much.
No, we're gonna change that for you, and before you know it, we'll be going to the Nino, i.e. casino.
Slang for scene. Okay. I don't think I'm going to do well just because I didn't even know that name. So, from the WDET newsroom, the satirical newspaper, The Onion, has acquired InfoWars. Alex Jones, the right-wing shock jock, conspiracy theorist, and founder of InfoWars, was forced to dissolve his assets at a bankruptcy auction. He owes $1 billion in defamation judgments for calling the 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting a hoax.
Coming up, Mad Magazine started in 1952. Over 70 years later, it's still around. We'll speak with the Pleasant Ridge director of a new documentary on the staying power of Mad and why comedy is important beyond the laughs.
Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. Comedy isn't just about telling a funny joke. In fact, comedy, and particularly satire, challenge our views of power and who wields it. It calls out those who have it, both in political and cultural spaces.
That's been true of Mad Magazine. Beginning in the 1950s, Mad has been poking fun at important figures in our politics, our movies, and our broader culture. It's been done with a purpose, to demonstrate that they, too, are flawed like the rest of us.
A new documentary about Mad by Pleasant Ridge resident Alan Bernstein makes its local debut tonight at 7:30 at the Redford Theater.
The film, titled When We Went Mad, marks the rise of Mad Magazine, why its satirical comedy has been so popular,
and why people use comedy for ends that go well beyond the laughs. To discuss the film now, we have Alan Bernstein here.
Alan, welcome to the Metro.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we want to start with a clip of the trailer from the documentary.
Mad is not good. Our readers are not smart. Mad is cheap. The quality is poor. It's stupid. That's our brand.
I love that. So let's start here. How did Mad get started?
How did Mad get started?
Yeah.
I'll try to keep it quick. The quick answer is the publisher of Mad had a long line of other type of comic books. Tales from the Crypt you may have heard of, Weird Science.
Yeah.
And one of the editors working for this publisher, Bill Gaines, Harvey Kurtzman, wanted to make more money. And his strength was in comedy. And so he decided to try a humor comic book. And they put their brains together and they came up with Mad.
Wow. A humor comic book.
A humor comic book. And as they say, not a Daffy Duck or a Woody Woodpecker, but a comic book that made fun of other comic books at the time.
I love that. So you directed this documentary, and it took 16 years to do so. So why did you want to capture Mad Magazine? What was important to you?
Well, I started off as a fan. I discovered it at around 7, and I basically became obsessed with it. I learned what the comedy was from every facet of it. And my passion was filmmaking. Mm-hmm. And combining the two, I decided to make the documentary. After waiting a while for other people, I thought better than me should be doing this, and they weren't. So I took it upon myself.
I love that. Creatives, you just have to create, you just have to create sometimes.
Alan, satire takes something serious, something that has cultural and social power and pokes fun at it. Why do you think it's important that we have a medium like this?
Well, it is one of the easiest things to hold people accountable. And it also, I think, is the strongest in terms of reaching the masses of people who need to feel like they have a voice in holding people accountable. It's laughter is something that's universal. Mm-hmm. There's no debating laughter. You know, some might say something's funny and some might say other things are funny, but using laughter as a tool to knock people down a peg who think they are better than you is just, I think, the most undeniable way to do that.
I mean, people say that alcohol is a social lubricant, but laughter is the social lubricant. And, it has me thinking about how comedy has this way of welcoming people into a conversation that might otherwise make them cringe or turn them off. Why does it make things that are political or even hurtful more digestible beyond just like the fact of it makes us laugh?
Well, I think the fact that it makes us laugh is the base of it. It is the great equalizer, not only in terms of bringing people down to your level, but also we all laugh. It is a basic human emotion, and whatever our differences are in any facet of our lives, we all laugh. And when we find that commonality, we find that thing that makes us all laugh in the same space for the same reason, nothing reminds us more of how we all have everything in common.
Yeah. So, Alan, before we let you go, what does satire do to political thought, especially you as a young man finding it at 7 years old and you're learning and growing with it? What do you think it did to your political thought?
It made me a very sarcastic person, but I say that in a good way because if you don't question the people and things, television, commercials, if you don't question the people who are trying to sell you anything, you go along easily, and you don't know if their intentions are good or not. So if you have that bit of satire, that sensibility of questioning who these things are, what these things are, I think you're far better off.
I love that. Alan Bernstein is a Michigan filmmaker. His new documentary is called When We Went Mad, the unauthorized history of Mad Magazine. That
screens tonight. That's right, Tia, at the Redford Theater at 7:30. Alan, thanks so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you.
Got super excited right there, Robin. Almost just jumped right all over you. But that's the Metro for Thursday, November 14th. The show is produced by Sam Corey, David Lyons, and Jack Philbranch. Our engineer is Nate Bender, and music's done by Sam Bobian and Will Sessions.
You can listen to recent episodes online at WDET.org, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. The show's also on YouTube if you like listening that way.
The Metro is a production of WDET, a listener-supported service of Wayne State University. If you like what you hear, consider becoming a member at WDET.org/donate.
And we know you do. This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. Thanks for listening.
See you tomorrow.